Prologue. In the midst of the roar of modern times, where humans continue to search for a theory of everything to explain the mysteries of the universe, religion, and existence, there is one text that has been considered a comprehensive guide to all this: the Quran. This book is a journey to explore how the Quran, through its preservation guaranteed by Allah, is not only a legal and moral sheet, but also a framework that unites all knowledge in one cosmic view from an Islamic perspective. The Quran, in its authenticity and consistency, promises to provide answers to the great questions about creation, the purpose of life, morality, and even the complexity of the universe. It is a book that not only teaches how to live, but also offers an understanding of reality that spans from the microscopic to the cosmic. In this endeavor, we will see how the Quran, with Allah's promise to keep it from change, functions as the theory of everything in Islam, a system that unites theology, ethics, and knowledge in one harmonious whole. We will explore how this scripture answers the questions of who are we, where did we come from, and where are we going, in a way that goes beyond mere scientific boundaries, integrating faith with the observation of the world. Let's begin this journey by understanding that in the Quran, we are not only looking for answers, but also the eternal truths that connect us to creation and the Creator. Chapter 1. Introduction. Section 1.1. Definitions of terms. Theory of everything. TOE. In the world of physics, this is a theory that aims to bring together all aspects of the universe, including gravity, electromagnetism, and nuclear forces, into a single theoretical framework. In the context of this book, the Quran is considered a TOE in Islam, offering a comprehensive guide to understanding all aspects of life, the universe, and man's relationship with God. Preservation. In Islam, preservation refers to Allah's promise to keep the Quran from alteration, deviation, or damage, so that this text remains authentic and relevant for all ages. Axiom. A basic statement that is accepted as true without the need for further proof, which is then used as a basis for constructing theories or arguments. Theorem. A statement that is proven based on an axiom or other proven theorem in this context regarding how the Quran functions as a theory of things. Section 1.2. Purpose of writing. This book aims to uncovering how the Quran, through its preservation by Allah, can be seen as a comprehensive guide to understanding the universe, morality, and the purpose of life from an Islamic perspective. It shows that the Quran is not only a holy book for worship, but also a theory that provides answers to fundamental questions about the existence of man and the universe. Strengthen the understanding that in Islam, scientific, moral, and spiritual truths do not stand alone, but are interconnected in a coherent whole. Section 1.3. Methodology. Axiomistic approach. Using the axioms of the Quran to construct an argument for how the Quran can be considered the theory of everything. Text analysis. Read and interpret the verses of the Quran to show how they provide explanations about different aspects of life in the universe. Historical and scientific context. A look at how the Quran has been a guide in different eras and how its teachings remain relevant to scientific progress. Scientific literature. Reviewing academic works from Islamic and non-Islamic scholars that discuss the Quran as a comprehensive source of knowledge. Section 1.4. Book structure. Chapter 2 will discuss the basic axiom, outlining how the Quran can be seen as the basis for understanding everything. Chapter 3 will develop the theory of preservation of the Quran, showing how the Quran is the theory of everything in Islam. Chapter 4 will explore the implications of understanding the Quran as a theory of everything, in the context of theology, science, ethics, and social. Chapter 5 will conclude with reflection on how this view may affect faith and understanding of Islam in the future. With this approach, we will see that the Quran not only covers the spiritual life, but also provides a framework for understanding all aspects of existence from an Islamic perspective. Chapter 2. Basic Axioms. Part 2.1. The Axiom of the Decline of the Quran. This axiom confirms that the Quran is a direct revelation from Allah, revealed to the Prophet Muhammad PBUH through the Archangel Gabriel. This forms the ontological basis for understanding the Quran as the theory of everything in Islam. D1. Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayat 2. Zalikal kitabu la raiba fi huda lil muttaqin. Justification. This verse affirms that the Quran is a book that has no doubt about its truthfulness, being a guide for those who are devout. This shows that the Quran is a definite and complete source of knowledge. D2. Surah Al-An. Verse 114. Afgir Allahi abtagi. Authorities wa hawalazi anzla alaykumal kitaba mufassalan. Justification, showing that Allah is the only judge and determinant, and He who has revealed the Quran to us clearly ensures that the Quran is a perfect and comprehensive work. Part 2.2. The axiom of the maintenance of the Quran. This axiom confirms that Allah guards the Quran from alteration or damage, ensuring that its message and truth remain consistent and relevant for all generations. D3. Surah Al-Hijr, Ayat 9. Inna nahnu nazalna zikra wa inna lahu hadfizhun. Justification. Allah Himself is the guardian of the Quran, providing a guarantee that this text will remain in its original form, making it relevant as a guide for all ages. D4. Surah Al-Fasilat, verse 42. La yatel bathilu min baini yadahi wa la main kalafi'i tanzala main hakimin hamid. Justification, declaring that no one can come close to the Quran to change it because it descends from Allah the most wise and praiseworthy, affirming its authenticity and consistency. Section 2.3. Axiom analysis. Consistency in decline. The axiom of decline shows that the Quran is a coherent whole, describing Allah as the only source of knowledge that is not limited by time or human limitations. Divine promise. The axiom of preservation affirms that the preservation of the Quran is not just a human endeavor, but a divine promise that keeps the Quran as an eternal and unchanging guide. Practical implications. These two axioms are the basis for Muslims to believe that the Quran offers consistent and complete answers to all aspects of life, from morals to knowledge of the universe. Section 2.4. Challenges to axioms. Modern skepticism. In the modern era, scientific skepticism often challenges the claim that a single text can be the theory of everything, questioning the relevance of the Quran in contemporary scientific contexts. Historical approach. Some researchers see variations in the copying or interpretation of the Quran as evidence that it may be inconsistent. Theological answer. Islamic scholars and Muslims answer by explaining that this variation is more about appearance or reading than substance, and that the Quran remains consistent in its message and purpose. Section 2.5. Axiom conclusion. This axiom confirms that the Quran is a revelation that can. Chapter 2. Basic Axioms. Part 2.1. The axiom of the decline of the Quran. This axiom confirms that the Quran is a direct revelation from Allah to the Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, which makes it the main source of knowledge in Islam. D1. Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayat 2. Zalikal kitabu la raiba fi'i hudal lil muttaqin. Justification. This verse confirms that the Quran is a book that has no doubt about it, being a guide for the devout. This provides the basis that the Quran is the absolute source of truth. D2. Surah Al-An, verse 1 and 14. Afgir Allahi abtaghi. Authorities wa hawalazi anzla alaykumal kitaba mufassalan. Justification. This verse confirms that Allah is the only judge and has revealed the Quran to us clearly, showing that the Quran is a complete guide to all aspects of life. Part 2.2. The axiom of the maintenance of the Quran. This axiom confirms that it is Allah Himself who guards the Quran from alteration or damage, ensuring that His message remains intact and consistent. D3. Surah Al-Hijr, Ayat 9. Inna nahnu nazalna zikra wa inna lahu hadfizhun. Justification. This verse states that Allah, who sent down the Quran, also takes care of it, providing a guarantee that the Quran will remain in its authenticity and consistency throughout the ages. D4. Surah Al-Fasilat, verse 42. La yatel bathilu min bani yadahi wa la maim kalafi'i tanzilam main hakimin hamid. Justification. This verse affirms that no one can come close to the Quran to change it, because it descends from Allah, the most wise and praiseworthy, reaffirming the aspect of preservation. Section 2.3. Axiom analysis. Consistency and decline. The axiom of decline provides the basis that the Quran is a coherent revelation, there is no contradiction, and provides guidance for all aspects of life and knowledge. The divine promise. The axiom of maintenance ensures that the Quran is not only relevant at the time of its decline, but will also always be relevant, being an outdated theory of everything. Practical implications. These two axioms provide a foundation for Muslims to believe that the Quran is a perfect and comprehensive guide to understanding life, the universe, and God. Section 2.4. Challenges to axioms. Scientific skepticism. Some may question how ancient texts could have been a guide to everything in the modern era. However, this axiom confirms that the Quran is a transcendental revelation whose relevance is not limited by time. Modern interpretation. Another challenge is how to apply the teachings of the Quran in today's scientific and technological context, but the axiom of maintenance confirms that the truth of the Quran remains relevant. Historical approach. Some historical studies have attempted to show variations in the text of the Quran, but this axiom allows for the understanding that the variation is in pronunciation or writing, not in substance or message. Section 2.5. Axiom conclusion. The axiom of the decline and preservation of the Quran is the main pillar in understanding it as the theory of everything in Islam. They allow us to see the Quran not only as a holy book, but also as a comprehensive guide to every aspect of life and knowledge, guaranteed to be authentic by Allah Himself. Bab 3. Al-Quran, Pelasterian Theorem. Part 3.1. T1 Theorem. The Quran as a theory of everything in Islam. Theorem. The Quran, through divine preservation, offers a comprehensive guide to understanding the universe, morality, purpose of life, and man's relationship with God. Proof. B1. Surah Al-Baqarah. Ayat 21. Who is the son of Rabbakum allazi khalaqakum wallazina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun? Justification affirms that God is the creator of all creatures, providing the basis for understanding the origin and purpose of life. B2, Surah Ar-Rahman, verses 1 to 78, explains the various creations of Allah, from the sky, earth, sun, moon, to humans and animals, showing Allah's power and wisdom in creating the universe. B3, Surah Al-Anbiya, Ayat 30. أَوَلَمْ يَرَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا أَنَّ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ كَانَتَا رَتْقًا فَفَتَقْنَاهُمَا وَجَعَلْنَا مِنَ الْمَاءِ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ حَيٍّ. Justification indicates the process of creating the universe from a single entity, which is in harmony with modern concepts of the Big Bang and the origin of life. Implication. I1. The Quran not only provides moral and spiritual guidance, but also offers a framework for understanding the universe, making it a theory of everything in the Islamic context. I2. It affirms that scientific knowledge and faith do not have to conflict, but can complement each other in a harmonious understanding of reality. Part 3.2. T2 Theorem. Consistency and coherence of the Quran Theorem. The Quran is a consistent and coherent revelation in its content and message, providing an uncontradictory guide to all aspects of life. Proof. B4, Surah An-Nisa, Ayat 82. Afala yatadabbarun al-Quran is law and min indi ghairillahi la wa indi ghairillahi la wa indi ghairillahi la wa wajadu fihi ikhtilafan kathira. Justification. Challenging the reader to reflect on the Quran, stating that if it was not from Allah, then there would definitely be many contradictions. B5, Surah Al-Araf, Ayat 54. Inna rabbakumullahu allazi khalaqa as-samawati wal arda fi sittati days min thumma istawa alal arsh. Justification. Showing consistency in the story of Allah's creation and power, which is repeated in various parts of the Quran to affirm the same message. Implication. I3. This consistency shows that the Quran is a reliable source for understanding life and the universe, providing a coherent answer to the great question of existence. I4. It helps in ensuring that the interpretation of the Quran should always be in the context of the entire text, avoiding distorted or contradictory interpretations. Section 3.3. Application of theorems in scientific studies. Method of tafsir. This theorem encourages a comprehensive method of interpretation, ensuring that understanding the Quran as a theory of everything involves a thorough and coherent study. Science and faith. In relation to scientific discoveries, the Quran offers a perspective that allows reflection on the wonders of the universe as part of faith. Historical debate. In academic debate, this theory becomes an argument against claims of change or inconsistency in the Quran, asserting that every part of the Quran is part of a harmonious whole. Section 3.4. Challenges to the theorem. Variation in reading. Qira'at. Although there is variation in the reading, this is considered a difference in the permissible pronunciation, not a change in the substance of the Quran. Modern claims. Some may challenge the relevance of the Quran in the modern scientific context, but this theory asserts that the Quran provides principles that remain relevant for understanding and exploring the universe. Section 3.5. Theorem conclusion. With its guaranteed preservation, the Quran serves as the theory of everything in Islam, providing consistent and harmonious answers to fundamental questions about existence, morality, and the universe. It allows Muslims to see the world through a comprehensive lens of faith, bringing together knowledge and faith in one coherent framework. Chapter 4. Broader implications and explanations. Section 4.1. Theological implications. Unity of faith and knowledge. The Quran, as a theory of everything in Islam, shows that faith and scientific knowledge do not have to be separated. This reinforces the view that all knowledge ultimately leads to its knowledge of God. Understanding Allah. Through the preservation of the Quran, Muslims have a consistent guide to understanding God's attributes, His relationship to creation, and the purpose of human creation. Section 4.2. Implications in science, science and religion. The Quran encourages reflection and scientific research with verses that invite humans to think about the creation and signs of Allah in the universe. This shows that scientific discovery can be seen as part of understanding God's revelation. Ethical exploration. With the Quran as a guide, scientific research should also consider ethics and morality, ensuring that scientific progress goes hand in hand with Islamic values. Section 4.3. Implications in law and morality. Foundations of Islamic law. Understanding the Quran as a theory of everything provides a solid foundation for the formation of Islamic law, fiqh, which includes aspects of individual and social life with consistent and complete guidance. Universal morality. The moral teachings in the Quran, which are preserved, provide principles that can be applied in all ages, offering moral solutions to modern challenges such as bioethics, human rights, and social justice. Section 4.4. Implications in education and dawah. Holistic education. Education in Islam, with the Quran as the theory of everything, should integrate spiritual, moral, and scientific knowledge, fostering a generation that understands the world in the context of faith. Dawah. Spread of Islam. With the understanding that the Quran answers all aspects of life, Dawah is an invitation to know Islam as a comprehensive system, not only as a religion, but also as a way of life. Section 4.5. Responding to modern challenges. Dissemination of information. In the digital age, the challenge of maintaining the integrity of the Quran and its meaning has become more complex. This theory emphasizes the importance of spreading the correct understanding of the Quran to counter misinformation or distorted interpretation. Criticism and skepticism. With the rise of skepticism towards religion, this theory provides a framework for answering scientific and philosophical questions with reference to the Quran, showing that Islam does not contradict knowledge, but integrates it in a holistic view of life. Section 4.6. Analysis of claims about the Quran and science. Historical and scientific claims. Some claims state that the Quran is not aligned with modern scientific discoveries. However, through this understanding, the Quran is seen as a guide that inspires scientific research and understanding, with verses that can be interpreted as knowledge progresses. Spreading myths. This book also explains how myths or misinterpretations of the Quran often aim to cast doubt on its authenticity and relevance. Section 4.7. Conclusion of implications. Understanding the Quran as a theory of everything in Islam has far-reaching implications, from theology to education, from law to the spread of religion. It encourages Muslims to see the world through a holistic lens, where every aspect of life and knowledge is united in a coherent whole, affirming that faith and science can and should work together to understand the will and creation of Allah. Chapter 5. Conclusion. Section 5.1. Overall summary. This book has taken us through a journey to understand the Quran as the theory of everything in Islam. We start with a basic axiom that affirms that the Quran is a direct revelation from Allah and is sustained by Him, and then builds a theorem that shows how the Quran offers a comprehensive guide to understanding the universe, morality, and human existence. Its implications cover a wide range of fields from theology to science, law, education, and dawah, suggesting that the Quran is not only a spiritual source, but also an intellectual and moral source. Section 5.2. The importance of preserving the Quran in the modern context. Relevance in today's times. In an increasingly complex world and where knowledge is rapidly evolving, the preservation of the Quran provides assurance that its teachings are relevant for all generations, being a guide that remains timeless. Interaction with science. Understanding the Quran as a theory of everything encourages Muslims to engage with modern science, seeing every discovery as part of understanding Allah's creation. Unity of the Ummah. The authenticity and consistency of the Quran is the basis of the unity of Muslims around the world, uniting them in a single view of life and the universe. Section 5.3. Future challenges and responses. Criticism and skepticism. With increasing criticism of religion, it is important to strengthen an understanding of the Quran as a broad and coherent source of knowledge, providing an informed response to questions and skepticism. Digital preservation. New challenges have emerged in safeguarding the Quran in the digital age, where the integrity of the text and its interpretation must be guarded from manipulation or misinterpretation. Education and literacy of the Quran. The importance of in-depth education about the Quran, which not only teaches texts, but also how to understand and apply them in modern contexts, to ensure future generations appreciate and understand the Quran as a theory of things. Section 5.4. Final reflection. The preservation of the Quran is not only about keeping the text from physical changes, but also ensuring that its meaning and message remain relevant and alive in the lives of Muslims. This is evidence of God's will to provide people with thorough and consistent guidance, showing that in the Quran, we have a framework for understanding everything from the perspective of faith. Section 5.5. Closing this book invites us to view the Quran not only as a holy book, but as a comprehensive guide to life, as a theory of everything that unites scientific, moral, and spiritual knowledge in one harmonious unity. Through its divine preservation, the Quran remains a source of truth, inspiration, and wisdom for Muslims in every generation, providing answers to fundamental questions about existence and the universe from an Islamic perspective. Epilogue. In every letter of the Quran, there is an invitation to explore the mysteries of life and the universe, an invitation to know Allah through His creation and His revelation. With the Quran as the theory of everything in Islam, we are reminded that the search for truth and meaning in life is directed by an eternal guide, which has been and always will be a light for those who seek. At the end of this journey, we are not just closing a book, but opening the door to a deeper understanding of the Quran as the theory of everything in Islam. We have explored how this revelation, perfectly nurtured by God, provides not only spiritual guidance, but also a guide to understanding the whole of reality, from the smallest to the largest, from the physical to the metaphysical. The Quran, in its eternity, becomes a bridge between the ages, connecting us with the generations before us and providing light for generations to come. It is a text that not only speaks to your soul, but also challenges your intellect, encouraging you to look beyond phenomena towards causes and ends. In a world often divided by specialized knowledge and technological advancements, the Quran remains a unifying voice, affirming that all knowledge is one in the will of Allah. It is a theory of everything that not only seeks to explain the universe, but also guides human beings towards happiness and justice in this and future life. Let us continue to read, understand, and practice the Quran with honor and humility, realizing that each verse is a lesson, an opportunity to get closer to eternal truth and wisdom. In its preservation, we find the assurance that we are not alone in our quest to understand all things. For the Quran, with Allah's promise to safeguard it, remains an invaluable guide in our journey through life and knowledge. Final words. With this, we conclude our intellectual and spiritual journey through the preservation of the Quran, the theory of everything in Islam. This book is not only a theoretical study, but also an invitation to look at the Quran with new eyes, as a revelation that covers all aspects of life and knowledge. We have explored how the preservation of the Quran by Allah provides a guarantee of the authenticity and relevance of this text for all ages. Through the basic axioms and theories constructed from the Quran itself, we gain a new perspective that the Quran is not only a holy book, but also a framework for understanding everything from the lens of Islam. In a world that is often fragmented by scientific and ideological disciplines, the Quran offers a holistic and coherent approach. It is a theory that unites science with faith, morality with existence, and the human will with the divine will. However, this journey does not end here. Each rereading of the Quran offers new opportunities for discovery and reflection. Perhaps only by accepting the Quran as the theory of everything in Islam, we can achieve a more harmonious life, where knowledge and faith are no longer considered opposites, but as two sides of one coin called truth. Now is the time for us to continue this exploration in our daily lives, in education, in dawah, and in every interaction we have with the vast universe. Let us bring this understanding into the real world, using the Quran as a guide to answer the questions of the present and the future, with the belief that in its preservation, we have eternal truth. Thank you for accompanying me on this trip. May we all continue to gain light from the Quran, which guides us to true truth and happiness. The preservation of the Quran, the theory of everything in Islam. Prologue. In the midst of man's efforts to understand the cosmos, there is a text that has claimed to be the theory of everything in the context of faith, morality, and existence, the Quran. This book explores how the Quran, through its divine preservation, is not only a guide to life, but also a framework for understanding reality from an Islamic perspective. Chapter 1. Introduction, Section 1.1. Definitions of terms. Theory of everything, TOE. In physics, this is a theory that aims to bring all aspects of the universe together in a single theoretical framework. In this context, the Quran is considered a TOE in Islam, uniting theological, ethical, and existential views. Preservation. Allah's promise to keep the Quran in its original form, which makes it relevant and authoritative for all generations. Section 1.2. Purpose of writing reveals how the Quran, as a preserved revelation of Allah, can be seen as a comprehensive guide to understanding nature, creatures, and the purpose of life from an Islamic perspective. Chapter 2. Basic axioms. The axiom of descent. The Quran is a revelation from Allah, providing an ontological basis for understanding the universe. Axiom of maintenance. Allah guards the Quran, ensuring that his message is consistent and relevant for all ages. Bab 3. Al-Quran. Pelestrerian theorem. T1 theorem. The Quran as a theory of everything in Islam. Evidence. Through verses explaining creation, the purpose of life, natural law, and morality, the Quran provides a comprehensive framework for understanding everything. Implication. The Quran is not only a spiritual guide, but also a theory that explains the relationship between humans, the universe, and Allah. T2 theorem: consistency and coherence of the Quran. Evidence: the verses of the Quran show consistency in message and wisdom, connecting the physical and metaphysical aspects of life. Implications: this supports the idea that a single scripture can provide consistent answers to big questions about existence and ethics. Chapter 4: broader implications and explanations. Theosological: the Quran as a theory of everything affirms the oneness of Allah, uniting knowledge and faith. Scientific: although not a modern scientific text, the Quran invites reflection on the universe in line with contemporary scientific discoveries. Ethical and social: offers consistent moral guidance, influencing laws, culture, and social interactions. Chapter 5: Conclusion, Section 5.1. Overall summary. The Quran, through divine preservation, offers a broad and coherent framework for understanding reality, from the smallest to the largest, from moral to physical. Section 5.2. Importance in the modern context. In the information age where the theory of everything is sought in physics, the Quran provides a spiritual and philosophical perspective that binds all knowledge in one harmonious view. Section 5.3. Future challenges and responses. In the face of skepticism and knowledge pluralism, the Quran remains the theory of everything for millions of people, requiring more in-depth teaching and understanding in the future. Epilogue. The Quran is not only a holy book, but also a theory that unites all aspects of life in divine harmony. With its preservation, the Quran remains a light of truth, a guide to life, and a cosmic outlook that inspires man's search for meaning and wholeness in existence. The Quran is the holy word of God, revealed to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, more than 1400 years ago. It is the primary source of guidance for humanity, a light that illuminates the path to truth, justice, and righteousness. Muslims firmly believe in the authenticity of the Quran and its miraculous preservation in its original form. This video will delve into the remarkable preservation of the Quran, exploring theological and academic perspectives. We will examine Quranic verses, historical evidence, and scientific analysis that confirm the divine promise to preserve this holy book. The Quran's influence extends beyond the realm of faith, leaving an undeniable mark on art, science, and human civilization. It is a testament to the origins of Islam and the enduring relevance of its teachings. God, in His infinite wisdom, has guaranteed the preservation of the Quran from any form of alteration or distortion. This is a promise that has never been broken and continues to be upheld to this day. This promise of preservation is clearly stated in the Quran itself, giving confidence to Muslims worldwide, assuring believers that His words will remain pure and unchanged. This is an assurance that brings peace and certainty to their hearts. Indeed, it is we who sent down the Quran, and indeed, we will be its guardian. Quran, chapter 15, verse 9. This verse emphasizes that the Quran is a divine revelation protected by God Himself. This verse underlines the importance of the Quran as a divine revelation and God's commitment to protecting it. This is a responsibility that Muslims take seriously. It becomes a source of tranquility and confidence for Muslims, knowing that the message they follow today is the same message revealed to Prophet Muhammad. This gives them strength and guidance in their daily lives. This divine guarantee has been evident throughout history in various ways, demonstrating the miracle of the Quran's preservation. From meticulous memorization and transmission to the development of sophisticated writing systems. Each of these efforts is a testament to the commitment of Muslims to the preservation of the Quran. Muslims have always considered it their sacred duty to preserve the Quran in its entirety. This is a trust accepted with a deep sense of responsibility and honor. The preservation of the Quran is closely tied to the concept of tawatur, which refers to its continuous and uninterrupted transmission through multiple reliable sources. This method of transmission, from the time of Prophet Muhammad to the present day, ensures the authenticity of the Quran and eliminates any doubt about its originality. From the very beginning, Prophet Muhammad encouraged his companions to memorize, recite, and teach the Quran. This practice ensured that the divine message was not limited to written text, but lived in the hearts and minds of believers. This chain of transmission has continued for centuries, with each generation meticulously preserving and passing on the Quran to the next. This unbroken chain of transmission stands as a powerful testament to the authenticity of the Quran and the dedication of Muslims to safeguarding its purity. The science of Quranic preservation goes beyond memorization and oral transmission. Early Muslims developed sophisticated writing systems and calligraphy to record and preserve the Quran in written form. The development of diacritical marks, vowel signs, and other orthographic features played a crucial role in standardizing the Quranic text and ensuring its accurate pronunciation. Furthermore, the invention of the printing press and the mass production of Quran copies in later centuries ensured wider access to the divine text, further solidifying its preservation. The meticulous efforts in preserving the Quran have resulted in an unparalleled level of textual integrity, unmatched by any other religious scripture. This achievement is a testament to the divine promise of preservation and the dedication of Muslims throughout history. Part 5. Addressing Doubts: A Rational Approach. Despite the overwhelming evidence supporting the Quran's preservation, some skeptics raise doubts about its authenticity. They often cite the existence of different Quranic readings or point to alleged historical discrepancies. However, these claims lack a solid basis and can be easily refuted through careful examination and scholarly analysis. Different Quranic readings, for instance, are not contradictions, but reflect variations in dialect and pronunciation that existed during the Prophet's time. These variations have been meticulously documented and do not alter the fundamental message of the Quran. Similarly, alleged historical discrepancies often stem from a misunderstanding of the Quranic context or a lack of awareness about the historical events surrounding the revelation. Part 6. The Miracle of Language: An Enduring Legacy. The miraculous nature of the Quran extends beyond its preservation to encompass the beauty and eloquence of its language. Composed in classical Arabic, the Quran's style is unmatched in its rhythm, rhyme, and literary artistry. It is considered the pinnacle of Arabic literature, inspiring generations of poets, writers, and intellectuals. The linguistic excellence of the Quran poses a significant challenge to those who deny its divine origin. Although revealed in the Arabian Peninsula in the 7th century, the Quran's language transcends the boundaries of time and place. Its timeless message continues to resonate with people from all walks of life, regardless of their cultural background. The Quran's impact on the Arabic language is immeasurable, shaping its grammar, vocabulary, and literary standards. It stands as a testament to the divine nature of its revelation and its enduring legacy. Part 7. The Quran's Impact on Human Civilization. The Quran's influence extends beyond the realm of faith, leaving an indelible mark on various aspects of human civilization. It is not just a holy book, but a comprehensive guide for life. It has inspired countless advancements in art, from exquisite calligraphy to meaningful paintings, architecture, science, and philosophy, shaping the course of history. The Islamic Golden Age, a period marked by unprecedented intellectual and cultural flourishing, is a testament to the Quran's influence. Driven by the Quran's emphasis on knowledge, learning, reason, and critical thinking. Muslims during this era held knowledge in high regard. Muslims made groundbreaking discoveries in mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and other fields, laying the foundation for many modern advancements, preserving and building upon the knowledge of ancient civilizations. The Quran's teachings on justice, equality, and compassion have also inspired social reforms and movements throughout history. Many positive changes in society are a direct result of these teachings. Its message of universal brotherhood continues to resonate with people from all walks of life, fostering peace, understanding, and cooperation among diverse communities. The Quran continues to be a source of inspiration and guidance for millions worldwide. Part 8. The importance of understanding the Quran. In an age of information overload and competing narratives, it is more crucial than ever for Muslims to develop a deep and nuanced understanding of the Quran. We must move beyond mere recitation and strive to grasp the true essence of its teachings. This understanding requires us to approach the Quran with sincerity, humility, and a willingness to learn. We must engage with the text critically, seek guidance from qualified scholars, and utilize the vast resources available to us. By deepening our understanding of the Quran, we can unlock its transformative power and apply its timeless wisdom to the challenges of our modern world. Part 9. A Call to Action. Embracing the Quran's message. The preservation of the Quran is not merely an academic exercise, but a call to action. It invites us to reflect upon and internalize its deeper meaning. It is a reminder of our responsibility to live by its teachings and share its message of peace, justice, and compassion with the world. Every small act of kindness can make a big difference. We must embody the Quran's values in our daily lives, striving to be beacons of light in a world often shrouded in darkness. In doing so, we spread a message of hope. We must engage in constructive dialogue, dispel misconceptions, and build bridges of understanding with people of all faiths and backgrounds. This is an essential step towards achieving universal harmony. The Quran's message is universal and timeless, offering guidance and hope to all of humanity. It reminds us that we are all part of one big human family. Let us embrace its teachings, strive to live by its principles, and work together to create a more just, compassionate, and equitable world for generations to come. Every effort we make is a step towards a brighter future. Attachment Appendix A. List of Quranic verses used as evidence. Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 2. Surah Al-An'am, verse 114. Surah Al-Hijr, verse 9. Surah Fussilat, verse 42. Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 21. Surah Ar-Rahman, ayat 1078. Surah Al-Anbiya, verse 30. Surah An-Nisa, verse 82. Surah Al-Araf, ayat 54. Appendix B. Glossary of terms. Axiom. A basic statement that is accepted as true without the need for further evidence. Theorem. A statement that is proven based on an axiom or other proven theorem. Preservation. The process or promise to keep something in its original form, in this context, refers to the Quran. Theory of everything. TOE. A concept in physics that aims to unite all aspects of the universe in a single theoretical framework. In this book, it refers to the Quran as a comprehensive guide in Islam, tafsir, the science that studies the interpretation of the Quran, fiqh, the science that studies Islamic law, dawah, the spread of Islamic teachings. Appendix C. References. Al-Quran Al-Karim, with various interpretations such as Tafsir Ibn Kathir, Tafsir Al-Jalalain, and others. The works of Islamic scholars such as Al-Ghazali, Ibn Taymiyyah, and Imam Nawawi regarding tafsir, fiqh, and aqidah. Modern academic books that discuss the Quran and science, such as The Quran and the Pursuit of Science by Nid al-Qasum. Scientific journal articles that discuss the relationship between the Quran and science, ethics, and law. Appendix D. Closing notes. This writing is an attempt to understand the Quran from a theological and academic perspective, showing that the Quran is a comprehensive and relevant source of knowledge for all ages. However, this understanding does not replace direct study of the Quran and Hadith, as well as advice from knowledgeable scholars. It is important to remember that any interpretation of the Quran must be done with honor, devotion, and an awareness of responsibility to convey the right message. This book is only a starting point for readers to explore more deeply the depth and beauty of the Quran, encouraging them to learn more through tafsir, hadith, and other religious sciences. This marks the end of the book, with the hope that the knowledge shared will be a light for its readers in understanding the Quran more deeply as the theory of everything in Islam. Final conclusion. With this, we close our exploration of the preservation of the Quran, the theory of everything in Islam. The book has been a profound intellectual and spiritual journey, showing that the Quran is not only a holy book, but also a broad framework for understanding the universe, life, and human purpose from an Islamic perspective. We have seen how the Quran, through divine preservation, offers consistent and coherent guidance for all aspects of life. From the axioms that affirm the decline and preservation of the Quran by Allah, to the theorem that shows how the Quran can be seen as the theory of all things, we get a new view of the role of the Quran in Islam and in the life of mankind. The implications of this understanding spanning a wide range of fields: theology, science, law, morality, education, and religious propagation, show that the Quran is a source that is not only relevant for spirituality, but also for knowledge and social development. However, this journey does not end here. The Quran is a living text, which continues to provide new meaning and inspiration to every generation that reads it. The understanding that the Quran is the theory of everything in Islam challenges us to continue to study, reflect, and practice its teachings in the context of our time. Let's end with the hope that every reader of this book will be inspired to research and understand the Quran more deeply, realizing that in every verse there is wisdom and truth that brings us closer to Allah, to ourselves, and to the world around us. May we all be given the wisdom to discover and live the truth contained in the Quran, which has been and will always be an eternal guide in our journey towards goodness and truth. Thank you for this shared journey. May we all benefit from the light of the Quran. With a grateful heart, we close the last page of our journey in The Preservation of the Quran, the theory of everything in Islam. This book has taken us on a profound adventure, revealing that the Quran is not just a holy book, but also a compass for understanding our existence, universe, and purpose in life from the lens of Islam. We have proven that the Quran, through divine preservation, is a timeless resource, offering consistent and harmonious wisdom for every aspect of life. From the axioms that affirm the authenticity and protection of the Quran by Allah, to the theorem that shows that the Quran is the theory of all things, we have been led to see the Quran as a light that shines on the entire spectrum of life. The implications of this understanding are broad and profound, encompassing theology, science, law, ethics, education, and the spread of Islamic teachings, affirming that the Quran is a source of knowledge not only for spirituality, but also for building a just and wise society. However, this journey is just the beginning. The Quran is a book of life, each verse of which invites us to find new meaning, inspiration, and guidance in every phase of life. The understanding that the Quran is the theory of everything in Islam is a call to continue learning, reflecting, and being inspired by its miracles and wisdom. Let's finish this with the hope that every reader will bring forward the spirit to dive deeper into the beauty of the Quran, realizing that in every surah and verse, there is hidden a clue to be the best of ourselves, to live with purpose, and to understand the world with love and wisdom. May each of us be given the light to see and live the truth bequeathed by the Quran, which has been and will always be an eternal guide in our journey to true happiness and the divine will. With humility and great hope, thank you for participating in this journey. May we all continue to experience the magic and wisdom of the Quran, which is a beacon of light in our every step. With abundant gratitude, we close the final chapter of our intellectual and spiritual adventure in The Preservation of the Quran, the theory of everything in Islam. This book has taken us on an amazing journey, revealing that the Quran is not only a holy book, but also a ray that leads us to understand the mysteries of the universe, the meaning of life, and the essence of our existence from the noble perspective of Islam. We have explored how the Quran, through divine preservation, becomes a source of timeless wisdom, providing consistent and harmonious answers to every question of life. From the axioms that affirm the authenticity and protection of the Quran by Allah, to the theorem that affirms the Quran as the theory of all things, we have been treated to a vast view of the beauty and depth of this revelation. The implications of this understanding are a call to live more deeply, encompassing theology, knowledge, law, ethics, education, and dawah, showing that the Quran is the heart of a thriving civilization full of justice, wisdom, and love. However, this journey is only the beginning of a long journey. The Quran is a living book, whose every sentence opens the door to new discoveries, endless inspiration, and clues to every changing age. Seeing the Quran as the theory of everything in Islam is an invitation to continue to strive, learn, and be inspired by its power and light. Let's conclude with the hope that every reader will bring this spirit into every aspect of their lives, realizing that in every surah and verse, there is a lesson waiting to be revealed, a strength ready to be drawn, and beauty yet to be discovered. May we all be given the ability to see and live in the light of the truth of the Quran, which has been and always will be an enduring guide in our quest for true enlightenment, justice, and love. With humility and great hope, thank you for participating in this journey. May we all continue to walk in the light of the Quran, which is the guiding star in our every step towards a life full of meaning and kindness. With a soul full of inspiration and hope, we close the final chapter of our journey in The Preservation of the Quran, the theory of everything in Islam. This book has created an intellectual and spiritual interpretation, revealing that the Quran is not just a book, but also an eternal light that illuminates our path to understanding the universe, life, and the purpose of our existence from a deep Islamic perspective. We have explored that the Quran, through the assurance of divine preservation, is the axis of wisdom that is infinite by time, providing a harmonious and consistent answer to every question that tests the human soul. From the axioms that affirm the divine origin and protection of the Quran by Allah, to the theorem that reflects the Quran as the theory of all things, we have been given a broad view of how this revelation changed the way we view the world. The implication of this understanding is an inspiring vision to create a society based on justice, science, morality, and love. It is an invitation to integrate the teachings of the Quran in every aspect of life, from theology to technology, from education to global ethics. However, this journey is only the first step in an endless adventure. The Quran is a living book, each verse of which invites us to discover new truths, radiates infinite inspiration, and provides guidance for each era. Seeing the Quran as the theory of everything in Islam is a big dream to build a world where every knowledge, every innovation, and every action is guided by divine wisdom. Let's conclude with a vision for a great future, where every reader will bring this spirit into every moment of their life, realizing that in every surah and verse, there is potential for revolution, there is power for transformation, and there is beauty to live. May we all be given the light to understand and live the truth of the Quran, which will continue to be a timeless guide on our journey towards a better, more just, and loving world. With infinite hope and humility, thank you for participating in this journey. May we all continue to move forward with the light of the Quran, which is the North Star in every step we take towards a future full of goodness, justice, and wisdom. The influence of the Quran on modern science. The influence of the Quran on modern science is an interesting and complex subject, covering various aspects from inspiration, methodology, ethics, to scientific philosophy. Here are some of the ways in which the Quran has influenced and is related to modern science. Inspiration and encouragement for scientific exploration. The Quran contains many verses that encourage humans to explore the universe and contemplate Allah's creation, such as in Surah Al-An'am, verse 97. And He is the one who makes for you night and day, sun and moon. All the stars are subject to His command. Indeed, there are indeed signs for the thinking people. Verses like this have inspired many Muslim scientists to conduct scientific research. Scientific methodology. Some scholars suggest that the modern scientific method has roots in the Islamic tradition, where the Quran encourages observation, experimentation, and rationality. The concept of ijtihad, or the individual's attempt to understand the truth, is similar to the principles of scientific research that require critical thinking and exploration. Scientific ethics. The Quran emphasizes honesty, integrity, and justice, all of which are fundamental principles in scientific research. Ethics in modern science, such as transparency in methods and results, and the use of scientific discoveries for the good of man, can be found in the Quran's teachings on pious deeds and virtues. Scientific philosophy. The Quran challenges the idea of seeing the universe as a harmonious and planned creation, which leads to the philosophy that the universe is a place understood through consistent laws of nature. This supports the idea that the universe can be studied and understood, which underlies modern science. Relationship with contemporary science. Some verses in the Quran have been interpreted as being in line with modern scientific discoveries. For example, in cosmology, Surah Al-Anbiya, verse 30 on the creation of heaven and earth from one whole. Embryology, Surah Al-Mu'minun, verses 12 to 14 on the stages of fetal development. And the water cycle, Surah Ar-Rum, verse 48 on water circulation. Although these interpretations may be controversial and not always direct, they show a dialogue between the text of the Quran and science. Education and knowledge. Diffusion. The Quran strongly emphasizes the importance of knowledge and education, which has prompted many Islamic educational institutions to integrate science in their curriculum. This has influenced the development of scientific centers such as those in Baghdad, Cordoba, and Cairo during the Islamic Golden Age, which played an important role in the transfer of knowledge to Europe. Challenges and criticisms. Although the Quran provides inspiration, there are also challenges in synchronizing the interpretation of the text with scientific advances. Criticism of the Quran's use to justify or explain modern scientific phenomena is often related to interpretive methodologies and contextual relevance. Overall, the Quran's influence on modern science includes inspiration for exploration, encouragement for ethical and rational research, and providing a philosophical framework that unites faith with knowledge. However, these relationships often require dialogue and a deep understanding of the two worlds, theology and science, in order to appreciate and integrate the two in a constructive and harmonious way. Scientific methodology in Islam encompasses a set of principles and practices developed by Muslim scholars to explore the universe and discover the truth, often grounded in the teachings of the Quran and Hadith. Here are some important aspects of Islamic scientific methodology. Observation and experience, mushahada. Direct observation of natural phenomena and experiments is the basis of scientific methodology. The Quran encourages the observation of the universe as a way to reflect on Allah's creation, as in Surah Al-An'am, verses 95 to 99, and Surah Ar-Rahman, which contain descriptions of various aspects of nature. Rationality and logic, aqwal. The use of logic and reasoning is an important part of Islamic scientific methodology. Scholars such as Al-Ghazali and Ibn Sina, Avicenna, emphasize the importance of reason in understanding the universe and truth. The Quran itself invites humans to think and consider the signs of Allah, verses, in the universe. Verification and validation, tahqiq. Research in Islam must be based on strong and verifiable evidence. This process involves data collection, analysis, and validation through repeated experiments or observations. This concept is similar to modern scientific methodology, which requires that the results of research can be repeated and confirmed by others. Integration of knowledge, Tawheed al-Ilm. Islamic scientific methodology encourages integration between different fields of science. It is based on the principle of Tawheed, one Godhead, which teaches that all knowledge is ultimately knowledge of God and His creation, so science must be seen as a whole. Scientific ethics, Adab al-Ilm. Research and teaching must be conducted with high manners, ethics, including honesty, simplicity, and humility. The purpose of science in Islam is not only for personal gain, but also for the common good, and to draw closer to Allah. Ijtihad in research. The concept of ijtihad, or the maximum effort to find the truth based on the interpretation of the Quran and Hadith, is used in a scientific context to encourage critical thinking and innovation. This is similar to peer review in modern science, where the results of research are debated and tested by the scientific community. Concept of istiqra, induction. Ibn Hazm and other scholars highlight the importance of induction, or generalization from specific observations to general principles, as a method for constructing scientific theories. It is the basis for many modern scientific methodologies. The quest for absolute truth, haqq. In Islam, the search for knowledge is the search for truth that comes from Allah, which leads to the understanding that science is not only about what can be measured or observed, but also about the meaning and purpose of existence. Methods of tafsir and hadith. Science. Methodologies in tafsir, interpretation of the Quran, and hadith science, the study of the words and actions of the Prophet Muhammad (PBUH), also influenced Islamic scientific methodology. It involves the criticism of sources, authentication, and interpretation of texts, which are similar to historical and philological methodologies in modern science. Islamic scientific methodology, although sometimes diverse in practice, has always emphasized the search for truth through rational, ethical, and spiritual means, reflecting the belief that all knowledge is ultimately knowledge of Allah and His creation. The method of interpretation of the Quran, or the science of interpretation, is a discipline that focuses on the interpretation of verses of the Quran. This interpretation is necessary because the Quran contains a complex text with layers of meaning that can be applied in historical, linguistic, and theological contexts. Here are some of the basic methods of interpreting the Quran. Tafsir bil-mathur, tafsir based on tradition. Tafsir with the Quran, using other verses of the Quran to explain the verse being interpreted, based on the principle that the Quran explains itself. Tafsir with hadith, using the words, actions, or consent of the Prophet Muhammad (PBUH) hadith to explain the meaning of the verses of the Quran. Interpretation with the opinion of the companions. Consider the interpretation of the companions of the Prophet Muhammad (PBUH), who are considered to have a direct understanding of the Prophet about the Quran. Tafsir bil-ra'i, tafsir based on opinions. Istiqlal al-ra'i, using personal opinion or ijtihad in tafsir, however this should be done by a person who has in-depth knowledge of the Quran, hadith, and historical context. This method requires a balance between reason and revelation. Diraya, tafsir based on linguistic analysis, knowledge of the Arabic language, and understanding of the historical and social context of the verse. Tafsir bil-diraya, tafsir based on understanding and knowledge. It includes linguistic analysis, historical context, culture, and sentence structure of the Quran. It also involves the use of other sciences such as balagha, rhetoric, nahwu, grammar, and sarf, morphology. Tafsir bil-isharat, tafsir symbols. Interpreting verses through symbolism and metaphors, which are often used in the Quran to convey spiritual or moral messages. Tafsir maqasid al-sharia, tafsir based on sharia purposes. This approach interprets the verses of the Quran based on the general objectives of Islamic Sharia, such as protecting religion, soul, intellect, descendants, and property. Tafsir bil-fiqh, tafsir hukum. Interpreting verses related to Islamic law, considering how they are applied in fiqh law. Tafsir bil-kasbi, tafsir based on scientific achievements. Using modern scientific discoveries to explain or reinforce understanding of Quranic verses related to the universe, humans, or natural phenomena. General principles in tafsir. Context of time and place. Understanding the context of the descent of the verse, asbab al-nuzul, is very important. Language and linguistics. In-depth knowledge of classical Arabic. Coherence and consistency. Tafsir should be in harmony with the Quran as a whole without contradictions. Ethics and morality. Tafsir must consider Islamic moral and ethical values. Iqra and tadabbur, encouraging reading and meditating on the Quran to gain a deeper understanding. Challenges in tafsir. Subjective interpretation. Because interpretation involves an element of subjectivity, there is a risk of interpretation being skewed or affected by bias. Modern context versus original context. Applying a verse in a modern context without losing its original meaning is a huge challenge. Unity of interpretation. Maintaining the unity and consistency of interpretation among various schools and approaches. The methods of interpreting the Quran are diverse, and each has its advantages and disadvantages. Mufassirs, interpreters, must have expertise in various disciplines to ensure that their interpretation is the closest to the truth of Allah's revelation. Here is a more detailed discussion of the methods of Quranic interpretation, which explains the approaches, techniques, and principles used in an effort to understand the meaning of the Quran. Tafsir bil-mathur, Tafsir based on tradition. Tafsir with the Quran. Principle: the Quran is considered the best explanation for itself. If a verse has a meaning that is difficult to understand, then other verses in the Quran can be used to provide clarification. Example: using Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 260, to explain the concept of alms in various other contexts in the Quran. Tafsir with Hadith. Principle: authentic Hadith provides historical context, direct explanation from the Prophet Muhammad PBUH, or practical application of Quranic verses. Example: a hadith that explains how the Prophet Muhammad PBUH practiced or applied certain verses in daily life. Interpretation with the opinion of the companions. Principle: the companions of the Prophet are considered to have a direct understanding of the Prophet regarding the Quran, so their opinions are highly valued. Example: Abdullah ibn Abbas's opinion regarding the interpretation of certain verses is often quoted in commentary because of his proximity to the Prophet. Tafsir bi al-Rai, tafsir based on opinions. Istiqlal al-Rai. Principle: involves ijtihad or maximum effort to interpret the Quran based on personal reasoning, but remains within the limits of Islamic teachings and knowledge of the Quran and Hadith. Criteria: interpreters must have an in-depth knowledge of the Arabic language, historical context, and the teachings of Islam as a whole. Celebrated. Principle: using reason and personal knowledge in tafsir, but with a solid foundation in knowledge of the Quran, Hadith, and Arabic language science. Techniques: linguistic analysis, understanding of historical context, and application of balagha, Arabic rhetoric principles. Tafsir bi al-diraya, tafsir based on understanding and knowledge. Principles: this is a more academic approach, using sciences such as tafsir, nahwu, grammar, sarf, morphology, ma'ani, understanding, bayan, explanation, and badi, the beauty of words. Example: analyzing the structure of Quranic sentences to understand the deeper meaning of certain verses. Tafsir bi al-isharat, tafsir symbols. Principle: recognizes that the Quran uses many symbols and metaphors, especially in conveying spiritual or moral messages. Approach: symbolic or allegorical interpretation, for example, understands the stories in the Quran as a broader moral lesson. Tafsir maqasid al-sharia, tafsir based on sharia purposes. Principle: interpreting verses based on the main objectives of Islamic sharia, such as protecting religion, soul, intellect, descendants, and property. Application: for example, interpreting the laws in the Quran in the context of how they achieve justice, goodness, and the well-being of humanity. Tafsir bi al-fiqh, tafsir hukum. Principles: focus on verses related to Islamic law and how they are applied in fiqh. Method: see how these verses are interpreted by the jurists in various schools of Islamic law. Tafsir bi al-kasb, tafsir based on scientific achievements. Principle: using modern scientific discoveries and understandings to reinforce or provide a new perspective on the verses of the Quran. Caution: care must be taken not to alter the original meaning of the Quran, but rather to demonstrate the relevance and wonder of the Quran in the modern context. General principles in tafsir: context of time and place, understanding the conditions when the verse is revealed, asbab al-nuzul. Language and linguistics: in-depth knowledge of classical and modern Arabic. Coherence and consistency: ensuring that the interpretation does not contradict the overall message of the Quran. Ethics and morality: tafsir should be in accordance with Islamic ethics and promote goodness. Iqra and tadabbur: encouraging contemplative and in-depth reading. Challenges in tafsir: subjectivity, the need to maintain objectivity in interpretation. Modern context: applying interpretation in a modern context while remaining true to the original meaning. Unity of interpretation: maintaining consistency of interpretation among various schools of Islamic thought. Interpretation of the Quran is a dynamic science that requires a balance between traditional knowledge and modern understanding, as well as ethical and spiritual integrity in each interpretation. Tafsir versus tadabbur. Tafsir versus tadabbur in the context of the Quran. Interpretation. Definition. Tafsir is the science of interpretation of the Quran, which seeks to provide a deep understanding of the meaning of the verses of the Quran. It involves analyzing the text from different aspects, such as linguistic, historical, and contextual, to understand its intended meaning. Methodology. Academic approach. Using systematic and knowledge-based methods, such as Tafsir bil-Mathur, based on tradition, Tafsir bil-Ra'i, based on opinions, and others. Source. Relying on the Quran itself, hadiths, the opinions of companions and scholars as the basis for interpretation. Objective. To provide a clear and accurate explanation of the meaning of Quranic verses, both in historical contexts and practical applications in daily life. Example. Tafsir works such as Tafsir al-Tabari, Tafsir ibn Kathir, and Tafsir al-Jalalain are books that provide a detailed explanation of each verse of the Quran. Tadabbur. Definition. Tadabbur comes from the Arabic word dabara, which means to contemplate or think deeply. In the context of the Quran, tadabbur is a process of personal and spiritual reflection on the verses of the Quran to find wisdom, lessons, and application in personal life. Methodology. Spiritual approach. More focused on personal, meditative, and introspective contemplation of the Quran. It is a more internal process in which the individual seeks to understand the spiritual and moral meaning of the verses. Source. Although it can use tafsir as a guide, tadabbur relies more on personal relationships with texts, life experiences, and self-reflection. Purpose. Increase faith, draw closer to God, and seek guidance and wisdom for daily life. This is an attempt to find the personal meaning of the Quran. Example. A person may do tadabbur when reciting Surah Al-Fajr, reflecting on the events of the morning and how it can remind of the beginning of a new life every day, inspiring to start the day with worship and kindness. Key differences. Focus. Tafsir focuses on academic exploration and objective explanation, while tadabbur is more about subjective and personal reflection. Approach. Interpretation requires an in-depth study and analysis of texts, contexts, and external sources. Tadabbur draws on an individual's life experience, intuition, and spiritual understanding. Purpose. Tafsir aims to understand the meaning of the text of the Quran comprehensively and systematically. Tadabbur aims to deepen the spiritual and moral connection with the Quran, seeking life guidance from each verse. Result. Tafsir produces written works that can be accessed by many people, while tadabbur is more about internal changes in a person. The relationship between the two methods. Although tafsir and tadabbur differ in approach and purpose, they complement each other in understanding the Quran. Tafsir provides a solid foundation and the knowledge necessary for a deeper tadabbur, while tadabbur can bring an understanding of tafsir into a more personal and spiritual life experience. The tadabbur method, or deep contemplation of the Quran, is a spiritual and introspective process that aims to unearth the wisdom, lessons, and guidance of the Quran in one's personal life. Here is a more in-depth guide to doing tadabbur. Mental and spiritual preparation. Intention. Start with a sincere intention to draw closer to Allah and seek wisdom from the Quran. Cleanliness of the heart. Cleanse the heart of worldly distractions with a view to focusing entirely on the Quran. Environment. Find a quiet, distraction-free place to read and reflect on the Quran. Reading with mindfulness. Slow reading. Read the Quran slowly, giving each word and verse an opportunity to soak in. This technique is called tartil in Islam. Repetition. Repeat the reading several times to understand each verse more deeply. Each rereading can provide a new perspective. Language and context. Understanding Arabic. If possible, learn Arabic to understand the words in their original context. However, tadabbur can also be done with translations, as long as the translations are reliable. Historical context. Understanding the context of the descent of a verse, asbab al-nuzul, can provide enlightenment about the meaning of a verse. Reflecting on meaning and wisdom. Personal reflection. Consider how the verse relates to your life. What does God want you to learn from this verse? Questions. Ask yourself questions about meaning, such as, what is the main message of this verse? How can I apply it in my daily life? What are the implications for my morality or spirituality? Relationship with life. The search for personal meaning from verses. For example, how a verse about patience might remind you to be patient in certain situations in your life. Meditation and contemplation. Meditation. Use meditation techniques to focus your mind on the verses being read, allowing their meaning to permeate your heart and mind. Contemplation. Take some time to sit still and allow your mind to reflect on the spiritual and moral meaning of the verses. This can involve visualization or imagination of how the verse manifests itself in life. Applications in life action. After pondering, think of concrete steps you can take to implement the lessons from the verse. Prayer. Pray to Allah to provide strength and guidance in applying the wisdom gained from Tadabbur. Tadabbur journal. Note: writing a journal about the thoughts, feelings, and lessons from Tadabbur can be very helpful. This allows you to see the progression of your understanding over time and reminds you of past reflections. Reading tafsir as an addition. Tafsir. Although Tadabbur is more personal, reading tafsir from scholars can provide a broader context and enrich your understanding. Discussion with others. Discussion. Sharing Tadabbur experiences with others, such as in a Quranic study group, can provide a new perspective and deepen collective understanding. Tadabbur is a never-ending personal journey, where each session can bring you closer to God and enrich your spiritual life. It is a process that requires patience, perseverance, and an open heart to receive the wisdom that Allah gives through the Quran.